kilometers of flooded area. Now more than 2 million people are competing for survival from only 10,000 square kilometers of flooded area. The flow of the Niger River into the inner Niger Delta has decreased by half since the 1980s, causing shrinkage of fertile land, fisheries, and pastures.
Mali is a dry country. The food sufficiency is of its population. We need to build dams. Dam irrigate area where Mali produces about 60% of its rice production. Dam also has disadvantages. That means less water for people living downstream. Less fish, less food, less cattle feed.
Yes, scarcity of water can lead to conflicts, can lead to competition. It leads to potential difficulties on the ground where people lose their livelihoods. Scarcity of natural resources can lead to conflicts between farmers and pastoralists, as is the case right now, again, in the Sahel, where we see more and more competition over access to farming land, or access to grazing land.
Disputes among different users, uprisings of armed groups, which have become common since 2012, and human displacements within Mali are an everyday reality. There are more and more reports showing that increasing scarcity of wetland resources, such as food, fresh water, and fertile land, are directly and indirectly contributing to human insecurity and violent conflict in Mali. Together with climate change, this would spell disastrous consequences for the dependent communities. The inner Niger Delta of Mali is just one example of where the condition of wetlands is influencing the security of people. Similar things are happening in other places around the world. It makes sense to sustain and restore wetlands as one strategy to enable peace and security. This action to safeguard wetlands is even more important and urgent given the likely impact of climate change, making water resources more unpredictable. It's time to lead wetlands to the global agenda on peace and security.
Okay, thank you. So for the next, we're waiting for the first speakers who perhaps have a slight change of the program. So Yami Dagny will arrive. She's taxi, just waiting. So we will move to the second speaker instead. But just before we start, just a quick show of hands. Who understands French here? Is it possible that or is it a big issue if the speaker speaks in French or? Okay, sure. Okay. So I'd like to introduce my colleague from Wetlands International. So Kurunga Keita, he's heading the office in Mali. It's good that we have a good mix of speakers today. We're talking about the global data processing, but also Kurunga, who can identify some of the actions on the ground. So the question is to...
Sorry. Yeah, Yami is here.
Oh.
So we can maybe go back to the...
Okay, so I think...
Sorry, Karunga, so we do the overview.
Back on track then.
Hi. Please.
Sorry.
Okay, Yami, thanks for making you're just perfectly on time. So if it's okay, we will still start here, or it's okay? So I think that would be excellent that you set the scene for starting. So the question is that, so Yami Dagny is the senior associate for the World Resources Institute. And I'd like you to ask us for a little more insight into the security crisis that's been unfolding across the inner Niger Delta, and how the water stress and climate change is exacerbating some of these risks for peace and stability in the region. So take a breath and you have around 4 or 5 minutes for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Despite the travel challenges, it is a pleasure being there. My twin was consult from the climate negotiations in Bonn. So it's a pleasure because, yes, I am escaping climate negotiations, but also I have having the opportunity to be part of this panel and engaging on the nexus of climate and security. I am doing so very humbly because my colleagues, the director of the BRI, the EU office, my colleague Alberto here, and also Charles Eismans have been leading the work looking at the frontier between border, especially, and security issues. But I am going to give some insight as the director of climate negotiations for the BRI, and also as a senior country analyst for the NDC partnership. This is a partnership, a global coalition of 100 countries, including also 30 institutions. And I am the senior specialist for Mali. And what I'm actually, 2 weeks ago, I was in Mali for my last visit. And going straight into the Alps, if you go to these slides on climate, when I arrived 2 weeks before, well, I arrived, the temperature was between 43 and 48 degrees. So we call temperature for that season. And 2 weeks before, there were 2 consecutive incidents of flooding that led to about 20 people dead, and also fishes, thousands of fishes, dead fishes due to contamination because of a mining factory affected by the flooding. So this is just to set also the scene. And during that visit, we met with the minister, the newly appointed Minister of Environment, who is from the center of Mali. He's a Dogon, and he's called the Pearl Dogon. These are really putting together the 2 ethnies that are currently, that we hear on the news currently conflicting. We've heard hundreds of people killed, recently. And this minister, called that conflict crisis as actually an ecological crisis. And after many years of military deployment, for him, it convinced that it is time to also look at holistic and ecological solutions to this problem as well. So not excluding one or the other, but it was time to have a much more holistic vision of the solutions. And the reasons are simple, and they are illustrated on the slide here. The way it was telling this is, yes, you have pastoralists desperate to have their herds, to find waters. You do have farmers with growing families who need more land to grow food, but at the same time, the arable land is shrinking. You do have too much of a portion of the crops, the limited crops, are not surviving some of the changing climates where the droughts are flooding. And this is exacerbating conflict. And when the governance is missing, and there's no trust in some of the locals, then the population also goes to very often hijacked by some of the jihadists in the region. And and this is not, there's been conflict in the past, but it had been out of proportion. And 20 years ago, when I landed in Africa for the first time, it was in Mali, and it was in that region, and I was able to really go freely and discover the beauty of that country. But when you were talking to the people 20 years ago, they were already talking about desertification and all the changes that were affecting their country. So this is just to set the scene. And if you go to, also looking at the temperature itself, is supposed to be, 1.5 degree more in this region than in the rest, than the global average. And the water stress is particularly important as well. And with the Resource Watch, we have worked with some collaborators for the projects on water, peace, and security to try to map out how to better predict those water risks in the region. So I will, and this was done with the aqueduct. I think I actually looked, exhausted the root cause of this instability, so we can go a little bit further. I will just, because I know that I have very little amount of time. I would just say that insist on the next steps. So we do have this collaboration with a lot of colleagues, some of which are here, I understand, to look at this nexus. I think some of the things that we're also looking at, water is, the critical, essential resource at the center of these discussions on climate security. But again, having a more holistic overview of the impact of deforestation when families do not have water, then another issue is access to energy, how to bring energy, use wind or solar, to then activate some of the irrigation processes, how to avoid deforestation. So how to look at, from water and being eventually, have a more holistic view how to bring the solutions. But yes, start by the prediction, detection, and then looking at the value of solutions. But I am sure that we will hear more from the panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll have time for questions at the end of the session, but at the moment we'll just go through each of the speakers. So now I'll introduce once again Kumbia Keita, who's the head of the Office of Wetlands International in Mali. And he has been working also in the management of some of the wetlands. So the question is, how do you see the role of management in this fragile ecosystem, particularly in the scope of this unfolding security crisis? And maybe you can explain what has already been done in the region, and how have you done this with the stakeholders in the region?
Thank you.
I think it's quite closely.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sahel region is composed mainly by drylands and with a high level of fluctuation of rainfall. But we have also some wetlands disseminated along rivers and lakes. While 3/4 of the population are living surrounding these wetlands along the main rivers and lakes. Because these water sources are deeply determining, influencing their livelihood. So it's why the main part of GDP is also produced in this region, about 80% of GDP. But in this region, we have a series of problems, but one of the biggest is the population growth rate, very high, from 3 to 3.6% per year. And the second problem is the tendency of the decrease of wetlands in the Sahel. So we have a sort of increase of human promiscuity along the rivers. For example, if you take in a Niger Delta, 20 years ago, we have just 500,000 people, and now more than 2 million in reduced area. The area has been reduced by more than 4, while population has been multiplied by more than 4. So a drastic increase of water stress resulting in conflict between farmers, pastoralists, and fishermen. So one of the drivers of insecurity and conflict in Sahel is linked in water availability and water access. It's why Wetlands is working on the linkage between water availability and accessibility and security. What is on ground now? Many actors are implementing many activities, including government, consisting in humanitarian action and military solutions to maintain peace, but it's not working well. Why? Because the main part of solution is bottom-up, top-down solution. So not involving enough communities in the solution. What we recommend is work in wetland conservation to reach the majority of the population living in wetlands and involve enough communities in conception and implementation of solutions. This is our recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much and also for keeping to the time. And now we'd like to move to Carmen Marquez Ruiz, who's the Policy Coordinator for Environment and Water of the European External Action Service. So the question is, also perhaps want to move to the, I'll continue to introduce you so then you're able to see your presentation. So for the last few years, we've been looking a lot between the interactions and some of the complexity of some of the issues, particularly some of the nexuses which are involved in this thing. Still, it's been difficult to find some of the solutions. And what we see is that in the Sahel, we have an escalation of some of the conflict, but also some of the complexities are still increasing. So the question is how the European External Action Service is dealing with this complexity within this region.
Thank you very much. And I would like to say that I work for the European External Action Service, and I used to be a European Commission official. And in my early years as a European Commission official, I discovered in Mopti the value of water. I went on a mission to Africa, and then I took advantage to visit Mali. This was 30 years ago, and there, you have no problem, taking a car and driving from Bamako to Mopti. And I want to see the one country without really, I was quite young then, and then I didn't really think about the difficulty of getting drinking water. And fortunately, we met some people who were much more organized than we were, who lent us some pills that helped us to clean the water. But well, just with this short personal story, I would like to say that now I am dealing with water diplomacy at the European External Action Service. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to enhance the diplomatic engagement of the European Union on water issues. The Sahel region is a region where we have also a strategy that has been, declared that security and development cannot be separated. That's why, if we need to work hand in hand with our development policy in the Commission, as we have done with water diplomacy. Also, that achieving security and development in the Sahel is only possible through regional cooperation, and that's very clear in river basins and lake basins. That also we have to improve capacity building, and that also that the EU cannot ignore the issue and have also an important role to play. But now, let me talk about our approach to water diplomacy in general, that I think that can be quite useful also in the Sahel region. We have three main issues that I would like to share with you. One is that we have Council conclusions that were adopted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs last year that establishes these principles of water diplomacy. Second, we have recent Council conclusions on the rights, on the EU human rights guidelines on safe drinking water and sanitation that have been released. They were approved last Monday on the 17th of June. And finally, also we have had a very active involvement supporting transboundary cooperation worldwide, but also in particular in the Sahel region. So, my colleagues have said before, we are really facing a context of water scarcity with further deterioration of water resources and ecosystems, with increasing competition among different people, with the increase of demographics. Also, this creates more probability of conflicts and tensions over access to water. We have 36% of the world population who live in water-scarce regions, and 1.8 million people lack access to safe drinking water. We had the basic conclusions were adopted last year in a view to face these increasing challenges on water. They consider water a key global challenge for the 21st century. And also, they intend to have a new approach to water that reflects the new challenges, in particular climate change, and also growing water insecurity. We also wanted to take into account two new important developments. One was the Paris Agreement on climate change, and also the Sustainable Development Agenda of 2030. So these council conclusions have several key ideas that are included in them. One is to have this strong link between water and security. Second, also to support transboundary water cooperation and governance. Third one is this idea of leaving no one behind, and this is a particular important idea in these European Development Days that are consecrated to fighting inequality. And also, they have a very clear commitment of the European Union to support the rights to water and sanitation. We also stress the gender dimension of the EU water diplomacy, because lack of access to water and sanitation has a very strong impact on women and girls. And also, as I said, we want to take into account the impact of climate change on water, and also the impact. So it is a kind of two-way relationship. And finally, also, we wanted to have a policy framework that would have an impact in what we do in the next programming phase of our development cooperation. So in fact, they are quite timely, because they are now they are a policy framework that should influence our next decisions on funding. So then, as I said, on water and security, we want to stress the idea that water should also be not only a factor for conflict, but also a tool for peace. Also, there is a very strong condemnation of water as a weapon. And also that we confirm or we remind the EU commitment to ensure access to water sanitation in humanitarian crises. As I said, on transboundary water cooperation, that's a very important objective of the European Union, and this is happening also in the Sahel region. We are supporting different bigger basin, like the Senegal Basin Commission and other institutions. But also, we have supported the UNEC Water Convention that promotes transboundary water cooperation. Another important idea is the support to the implementation of the SDG6 on access to water and sanitation, because unfortunately we are quite behind in terms of implementation. And as I said, there is a very clear recognition of the EU of the rights to water and sanitation, and something interesting also with including the protection of the EU to human rights defenders that defend the water. There are also interesting ideas that is linked between water and circular economy. It's very important to save water, to reuse water, to support innovative solutions, to support research. The Commission is quite active through its Joint Research Center on water issues. Also, we want to promote the partnerships involving public and private actors and to bring water and climate change. I see that I'm talking a bit too long. So, just the final sentence is that we would like to make sure that this doesn't have a particular impact in our development cooperation in the Sahel region in particular, because as others have said, we need to have this holistic approach. We cannot just deal with water just as an environmental issue or just as a development issue. We really have to tackle this problem from a holistic issue linked with development and security.
Sorry to rush you, but I think we'll try now. Once after this first round, we'll go straight to the floor for questions because we're a little behind time. Thanks very much. Next, I would like to give the floor to Hans Jan from the head of agribusiness rural development of the European Investment Bank. Of course, the European Investment Bank is investing in some ambitious water infrastructure projects in the Sahel region. But this is obviously difficult because of some of the conflict, but also some of the context in this very fragile ecosystem. Some of these developments, of course, can create some winners, some losers. But the question is for the EIB, how does it deal with this complexity, but also to ensure some equity of this development, of this investment into the region?
Thank you very much. We are the Bank of the European Union. We have credit, not grants. So that's one difference we have to keep in mind. And in the sub-Saharan region, we mainly work under the Cotonou mandate of the European Commission for risk-bearing purposes. But I would put something different because I'm not representing the water division. I'm from the Food and Rural Development division, so agriculture, food, bioeconomy, and we all work globally. We are aware and we've been participating in the Niger discussions on water, but I would put it a little bit more. This is in 4 minutes. I think we talk a lot, and there's a lot of things talking about the social impact, the economic impact. But if I drill it down, what is the water food nexus? It's only a triangle involving the sun, the soil, and water. This is what is interacting, and we hopefully have benefit out of this interaction. And if we do it in harmony with sun, soil, and water, it works. What does it mean? We have overexploited often and underestimated the power of the sun. And now we see what water needs and water plants also can do. So we have to take care of water in a different way. Why? In order to have fertile soils. And your problem in this region is not unique. So what are we doing? We're trying to find, according to the FAO, what is on the wetlands interactions, to see what is the right balance between small farmers, small fishermen, industrial farming, the needs of the urban population, either with the needs of the rural population. What I can bring to the table is just 2 or 3 thoughts, and after the questions. What did we do in your region? Going back to the soil fertility, a lot of irrigation is making more damage than good things. They help the current generation to destroy the future generation's possibility. And we have projects in the former Soviet Union. You see the Aral Lake, with a huge cotton production. There's nothing left from the lake. And we have huge salinity problems in the soils. We have the same in southern Spain with irrigation things in Israel. So irrigation can, in the longer term, create reduction of fertility in the soil. So we have to be careful with man-made solutions for the current generation. What are we doing in Senegal? In Senegal River Basin, the river delta, we try to find seeds plants who are more resilient to higher salinity in the soil. So there we are helping a project to have rice production in saline ground. And it's next to Ramsar area, and the plants are growing well. But what was underestimated, that the birds also like the rice. So we are feeding not only the humans, but we are feeding a huge population of birds from the Ramsar region. So this is a risk for repayment capacity of this promoter. But it's good in general. So soil fertility, so would make big exclamation mark. Whatever we do, we should not underestimate what we damage. In China, we are helping to plant 800,000 hectares trees to reduce soil erosion, water basin management, flooding protection. This is so the trees and bushes should not be underestimated in all their positive effects they can do in water management. We have just started projects, new projects for rainwater harvesting. But it's everywhere in Africa, also small dams, 2-3 meters of sand to capture water, but combine it with bushes and something which produces lignosus material or even some food. So these are things which should be spread out wider, the interaction of soil, water, and sun. So said already discussed renewable energy. There are certain things, but for me, the cropping pattern is something which we have to look at. New seed varieties, we are financing a lot of new research into more resilient seeds in Europe, not GMOs. But we have to have an adaptation process. Deforestation, we are trying to combat with forest programs, afforestation. But we need always a competent promoter, counterpart, who can give us a certainty that the money is used properly and that it's paid back. So there we are looking not only to government, but increasingly to the private sector. And here for your region and similar regions, I have a question which I will put to the floor, is if we get private sector promoters, they often go for big scale agriculture. They go for industrial crops, not necessarily for food crops. So it's a question, public-private partnerships in the fight on water and in the distribution of water, what type of crops should we go back? Something which was there 30, 40 years ago, big cotton production. Should we go for big plantations? I don't know, we have no answer, but this is up to the countries and up to the actors. We are ready to look into it, but they have to be environmentally sustainable and have not to be overexploiting the resources. In the region and in Eastern Africa, we have already started smallholder, integrating of smallholder farmers, and specifically storage to reduce harvest and post-harvest losses, so to balance between dry and wet seasons. Before I finish, I have two other things to say. So we are also looking in other regions how we can make better reuse of sewage water, which is not in Mali necessarily, but there are big cities, but the drinking water is there, clean, but then nobody thinks about reusing this source in a proper way. It has some risks, and it should not be forgotten, the reuse of sewage water. Last point, soil fertility and changing climate discussions. So I said already, we are operating in Central Eastern Europe, China, and Africa, we do. But we have the same problem, and that should not be forgotten. Last year and this year, around the Baltic Sea, in the Baltics, in Poland, Sweden, Finland, also in Germany, there was so much drought, the grass could not grow, and the discussion goes into the northern part of Europe as well. They had to, in some areas in Poland and around the Baltic, they had to kill or send about 20 to 30% of their cattle to the slaughterhouse because they had no grass and no hay. So it's not a phenomenon only in the Arab region, it's also reaching not only the Mediterranean region, which has a traditional idea of irrigation and drought, but it's now reaching also northeastern part of Europe. So we are all in the same boat, and we need to find solutions to keep soil fertility adequate and cautious water use, not go to old solutions of irrigation, find new solutions and integrate trees and bushes into the management of sun, soil, and water. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Also, it's interesting to learn how the European Investment Bank is not just about big projects, but also some microfinance. Just discussing for smaller infrastructure. So the last speaker is Leonard Mitzi, who is he's the head of unit in DG DevCo on rural development, food security, and nutrition. So as we've discussed, some of these conflicts are often caused by access to water, and are some of the main drivers also of food insecurity and displacement. As has been pointed out recently in a recent report, the Global Report on Food Crisis, which was presented in Brussels in April this year. So I would just like to give you the perspective of from the European Commission on the humanitarian development and peace nexus. And we'll move to some questions from the floor.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So, as you said, Mr. Chair, we as European Commission and Commission services, other partners, we are more than now 11 partners. That's probably that it's good that the audience know about the global report on food crisis, which was unveiled a few months ago at our April event. It was a global event involving also a number of UN agencies. And I don't want to repeat, but clearly the situation is not a positive one in terms of acute food crisis. We have more than 113 million people across 53 countries experiencing acute hunger. This is the thermometer is known as the IPC phase 3, 4, and 5. So these are the Sudan's, Venezuela's, Burundi's of this world. So Yemen is the big one we're speaking about, more than 15 million. And what are the primary drivers? The primary drivers are three: conflict and insecurity, where we package what we are discussing now. We are speaking about 74 million. Sahel is one of them, Horn of Africa is another. So 74 million are struck by food insecurity because of conflict and insecurity. Climate and natural, again, we can package part of the situation with climate and natural disasters, another 29 million, 23 million in 20 African countries, and economic shocks, 10 million. So you see that we're speaking about basically 100 million which are impacted by conflict and insecurity, climate and natural disasters. I wouldn't repeat what my EAS colleague said. We have another set of council conclusions, a lot of other council conclusions, operationalizing the humanitarian development nexus, strategic approach to resilience, strengthening global food security. However, we need also to be clear that making conclusions on their own will not solve the problem. We need a more holistic, and beyond words of holistic, we need a better way of framing things. And we are not there yet. Even the mere phase that we have 6 set of council conclusions might not be a smart way of doing things in a more cross-cutting and more strategic way. And because I think we also need to come here and try to give solutions and find solutions. First, we need more civil society engagement and national ownership. We have budget support, but this is country. What we are discussing, what we have been discussing in the last 45 minutes, this is cross-boundary. So we need to engage with ECOWAS, with civils, with Club du Sahel more than we are doing. This requires a regional approach in policy making. And we are not always there when it comes to regional approach in policy making. So besides the top-down, because most of things today are top-down, we need to really engage more bottom-up by empowering civil society organizations. We need to have more common objectives and shared standards. We need to have those early warning mechanisms, because otherwise we would still work in crisis mode. So, 3, maybe take home, and I discussed this for those who have been in the session earlier this morning on rural revitalization. I think we need to have a rural revitalization policy to actually tackle what's happening in these zones. That means that we need a resilient action plan which takes into account the water stress, water availability, but within the context of rural-urban linkages and rural-urban pressures. How do you find solutions to the pastoralists, the livestock herders, the farmers, to the youth, to the gender? We need to do this in a more rural revitalization strategy, which until now we don't do it. Why? Because we are very much in sectorial approaches. We have an agricultural policy, we have an environmental policy, we have a livestock policy, and it's not called what we should have more a cross-cutting policy. We are doing a lot, and the last speaker from the EIB, we are clearly working a lot on research, because research is part of the solution. So even here we had with us in the past 2 days the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, which is really specialized in dry areas. So seeing what we can do with brine, with wastewater management, with recycling of water, with CORAF, which is the research station in West Africa. So how to create those crops which are adapted to climate change, to salinity, and to water stress. That's first. How to have an approach which is more territorial. If you look at cotton, there isn't much cotton happening around, but if you don't stabilize the cotton sector in the C4 countries in West Africa, you will have problems of security. The same with water. So rice, everyone seems to be in rice, but if you look at the import patterns of West Africa, everyone is importing rice. So there is an inconsistency as well there, because most African countries, at least today, are not competitive on rice production. So if you were to tell me what are the solutions between rice, cotton, research, security, water stress, this is extremely complex. And how we are structured today, we are not structured to actually work into this cross-cutting, cross-disciplinary approach. We need to use the coming months of the change of commission, change of parliament, pre-programming, programming to come together across all services to see in terms of solutions what we can do. In terms of DEFCO, we are trying to use a more landscape approach gradually, early days, so more to see in terms of landscape, in terms of ecosystems, what we can do across different parts of DEFCO, build up a research portfolio, but also use UN Security Council resolutions to actually track progress. It's nice to have conclusions, it's nice to have resolutions. If no one tracks progress, we will come here in a year's time, 5 years' time, and the 130 million in crisis will be 120 and 150. So we need to reverse this trend, and we need to reverse this trend as a donor community, but at the highest level, but ideally in a regional approach. So whatever comes out from this session, clearly, we as entry points on some research initiatives that we are taking in our agriculture research portfolio, and the first 2 years of our big agriculture research portfolio was focused on Sahel, is also that we convey a message to the G7 which focuses on Sahel, also hence the French presidency, so that these elements which are discussed today don't fall in the cracks and they are more valorized, but clearly having a more regional approach rather than the bilateral approach which we are usually wanting to take.
Okay, thanks very much. We now have a little less than half an hour left of the session. I know 2 people have asked to make a short intervention from the floor, but first of all just like to take a couple of questions to get some feedback from the speakers. Do we have a roaming microphone or?
Yeah.
So first one, I see one at the back. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Claudio Baciloni, I'm the head of the water sector in DEFCO, so a colleague of Mr. Mitzi. I think two observations. I've not heard talking much about energy, which is, as we have seen before, there is a foamy dam that is going most probably to exacerbate the problems in what is water availability in the region. The second one is another factor that is very much important in this context, because I mean the Niger River touches 9 countries, and the water is not a problem of one single country, even if the inner Niger state wetlands are indeed concentrated in one country, but the rest of the countries, they have also to be involved in the management of the water resources, and that indeed confirmed what Leonard was saying, that it's a regional dimension of the water resources to be tackled. So the effect of a trilateral conversation between the sectors dealing with energy, food production, and water resources, that has to be focused on, and we have, even if that confirms the fact that sometimes internally in our organization there is not much cross-cutting activities, but there are already ongoing projects and activities dealing with this nexus, energy, food security, and water availability in the regions. We are already working with the Niger River Commission on that. There is an ongoing program, but indeed there is a much needed political willingness in discussing about the use of those water resources that are so important for indeed also those crises that are ongoing.
Does anyone want to make a comment from panel?
Clearly, I didn't mention, but besides the humanitarian development peace nexus, we have the land, water, energy nexus. However, our programming, all this has to become under regional programming. So these solutions are regional programming solutions. The question is, how do you balance national and regional programming so that you have a more systemic approach, which is cross-disciplinary and cross-sectorial, which is a fundamental new way of doing things, because even to get the report from an HDP, so humanitarian development, and getting the peace nexus, was a big hassle, let alone if you want HDP, land, water, energy, in a regional context with all the complexities of all the players, in a multilateral context which is not really functioning sufficiently well. And you have a multilateral sub-regional context which needs to be embedded into solutions. Otherwise, we continue going bilateral or the business as usual approach. This will not solve what we are discussing today.
Carmen, you want to make a short one?
I would like to make a comment on this water energy. I would like to make a comment on the water, food, and energy nexus. You know, we are living in the age of nexus. Everything has to be linked to something else. And it's not water, that's a kind of very basic idea. And I would like to mention a very interesting project that is starting now that is called Flexus. And that is, it works on the link between security and climate resilience in a fragile context through water, energy, and food security nexus, both in the Niger River Basin and also in the Lake Chad. The idea is to identify some kind of, to first identify the needs in these areas, that by definition are regional areas, and to try to then provide grants to satisfy these needs. I think that these kind of projects are very promising, and we should try to develop them more.
Okay, thanks. So we have, to try to do questions. So we have there's one question at the back, and I have a question for you, and then we go to the short intervention.
Thank you. Eric Gutierrez from the Christian Aid Program Mali. Really more of a challenge than a question. So there clearly is a problem, but when looking at the presentations, I'd like to ask or challenge the speakers whether there has been a proper analysis of what the problems are. So who is to blame, what's to blame? In the video, population growth has been described as one of the reasons for the problem. But what is this population growth? Is this normal population growth, or is it because of migration and displacement from elsewhere, so that there is an actual tendency that they will come to the wetlands? So there is problems outside, but it's to be considered, not just the population growth inside the wetlands. The speaker mentioned that the poor should be then responsible and accountable for destroying the soil, but or underestimate the power of the sun. But are these impacts problems of other? Are those the problems themselves, or are they symptoms of other problems that needs to be investigated? There's also the issue of cotton. Cotton has collapsed in Mali, and one of the reasons is that because there's overproduction of cotton in the US and other developed countries, so that the prices have gone down. Because those cotton are very much highly subsidized, and overproduction. So Malian farmers of cotton will not compete. They cannot sell at a price that they can even recover their costs. So I think it's important to, it's very difficult to think of solutions if we have not clearly defined and properly elaborated on the problem. So just moving that forward as a comment.
Okay, give me just one question, and then we'll come to the panel. Then.
Hello, thank you. My name is Marianne Kektunen. I'm from the Institute for European Micropolicy, where I lead our global program. I think Carmen said it really well. It's an age of nexus, and that's also what my question is about. So there's a lot of talk about circular economy, a lot of enthusiasm about circular economy, and I'm wondering whether you have thought about any of the panelists how the circular economy agenda shift towards circular economy, which the European Union certainly is supporting as well, might interact with the water nexus and water and peace nexus in terms of helping to reduce pressures, or perhaps having some other impacts.
Can we take some of the replies?
I think the new buzzwords, circular economy, have been there already 30 years ago. We had the green dot and recycling and the pyramid. In our institution, we have these things that we work with different technical knowledges together. We have financed the introduction of recycled paper in the 90s in Europe. It was us in EDD. We didn't shy away from this. Even the Italians didn't want to have tissue paper, which was not from virgin pulp at the time. So we have to integrate this, and I would say it's resource efficiency at the end, not living in abundance and not continuing to have this consumerism idea of the last 2 generations. So this is included in all areas, and it's at the end efficiency, and knowledge combined is competitiveness. So if we come back to the economic terms, it's nothing new. It's just that we go away from nowadays education systems are like this. Everybody knows only one thing, but we have to get a pyramidal discussion again, that the people learn more from the beginning so that they can see the interactions, what is called nexus now. But that we make also in our institution, we are doing it, we look in the emulation of protein, and therefore I had the question, what shall we do with the cotton and other industrial crops in some developing countries where land is scarce, land grabbing exists. So there is a discussion where I think my colleague from DEFCO, it's very important that the NGOs and civil society is participating actively before we put misallocation of huge amounts of money, which have more disastrous effect, what we've seen in irrigation in the 60s and 70s. So let's not do the same mistake again. One other point, what I learned at university when it comes for the first energy, we didn't talk about energy. When I was at university, I learned energy, the biggest important energy is food. We are misled by the fossil fuel generation. Energy is survival energy and convenience energy. That's how we were trained. So when human beings don't want to work with their muscles, they use fossil fuel to replace it. So this is convenience. So food is an essential survival energy. So food and energy is one thing, but two different uses. So energy is food and convenience.
Thanks very much. I'd just like to give the chance to give a short intervention from Landry Wensomne Hongre, who's working for the Water Aid for Burkina Faso. We had a lot of demand to be on the panel, which is very nice. We would very much appreciate to hear your perspective from Burkina Faso. I don't know if you would like to take the... So we'll talk about the issues of addressing conflict over access to water resources and in climate variability. So please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I'm the French speaker, so I apologize for my English. I will try. I'm Landry from Water Aid Burkina Faso. I'm a project manager. What I want to share is about Water Aid approach for securing water resources at local level as it contributes to what we are discussing here. And it's linked to what Mr. Peter said about community participation in the water resource management. This project started in 2010, involving 4 countries, in Ghana, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. And we focus the approach to increase the capacity of communities, especially in the most remote areas, to understand and monitor water resources in order to make informed decisions related to all usage of water. How we do it? We develop simple, accessible, and affordable tools for communities to use, like rain gauge, method, yes, and train them in the way to allow them to use this tool to monitor and use the information. We also link communities with local authorities and technical services to be able to share the information and they collect on the ground. And we set up at the village level assemblies to present the information about water resources and jointly plan and decide how to use this information in the decision. We also involve decision making on competing users as personal, agricultural, wedding, and to even in scale at the industry level. Yes. And the steps of this approach started by identifying the threats on the water resources and their impact, and then to monitor this threat by the communities, and then to decide on making on the management and improve assets to the wash. And the last step is, yes, we think to use all these information gathered to set up decision. And this contributes to reduce risk and improve resilience for communities. Thank you.
Very much. So I need to ask my colleague who's really the boss.
We have 10 minutes.
10 minutes? No, 4 questions.
3 more questions and then the person.
Okay. So we have a couple more questions then. And please,
I'm Karen Market from International Wetlands. I would have a question. So we spoke about also from several speakers the notion of innovation. We are constantly running after new innovations. But what about traditional governance? And how would you include all these conflicts, like conflicts around land, conflicts around water issues, and this competition for resources is not new. So there are new challenges. So we need climate change, population growth, migration, destabilized regions that then lead is to further force migration. And I think this puts strain on the traditional and the legal conflict resolution mechanism that already exists. So how can we both combine running after innovations and apply innovations, and apply them both in the legal system but also in the traditional governance, and use this knowledge from communities? The Sahel is a vast region, it's not everywhere and it's unstable, there's also pockets of stability. And we understand as an aid community, we understand what makes these pockets of stability stable and what can we learn from that.
On this point, and also on this point, I think for us also it's very important to involve civil society and also local communities. Of course, we have always to find the right balance between the different interests, different approaches, but it's also in our conclusions to make a reference to the importance of civil society and local communities. Also, on the question on research papers or studies or what is the situation in the Sahel, I would like to refer to two papers that are recent, that are very good. One, besides of course the one that we have all on our chairs prepared by Wetlands and human migration in the Sahel. There is also a recent study by Adelphi on the left chart. That is also a very good study on the link between security and water and climate change. And also there is also another study prepared by the Kingdom Institute that covers Iraq and also the Sahel region. So if anyone is interested in these research papers, I can provide the details. And then on the issue of this allocation of human amounts of money, I think that it's, we have to, I think that we are over this kind of approach that huge infrastructure projects bring development by definition in an automatic way. We have to be more nuanced in the kind of project development projects we are financing. It has to be sustainable development involving, of course, local communities. And so in the area of water, we have this risk of having maybe big diversion projects of water that can create also a lot of harm and may create even more harm than benefits. But also you have these big dams projects that are, developing in different regions of the world, and we have to put in practice this water, food, energy nexus. We have to see what is the right balance, and also to have this regional approach where we cannot just have the interest of one or two countries at the expense of the whole riparian states. That's also very important in our approach.
Thank you. About the local governance or the governance of natural resources and innovation, there is a sort of overlap in Sahelian countries and between traditional law and modern law. Sometimes contradiction between about land management, about natural resource management and access. It's why many NGOs, including Wetlands International, is dealing with communities, with local NGOs to find a way to manage without creating another conflict between water users. For example, traditionally, the land and Burbu, it is a sort of water grass, belong to Joro, but the management is not permitting innovation because you can't invest a lot in the land. So we are discussing to find a middle way to move forward by introduction some innovation in traditional and practice and experiences. So we can't remove traditional thinking and practices, but we have to introduce some innovation, for example, using mobile phone for information, for training, etc. In the other hand, we have a new actors in the region for example, trying to impose Sharia, a new governance system. It is a big issue now. But what we are doing in Niger Delta, for example, is to set up some association and coalition through many sectors to deal with interest with all the natural resource users. Find a way to take into account all the interests and to manage natural resources too. Thank you.
Yeah, because.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to come back on the issue of unintended consequences. First of all, we highlighted the drivers, with population. We mentioned the dams. Deforestation is also important. The use of energy. And also extractive industry, especially mining industry, should not be left out of the picture. But what I wanted to highlight is that in the international negotiations now, there's been a lot more attention to this issue of response measures. It's not just unintended or adverse effect of climate policy on another country, but also within. And that's been also triggered with this issue of just transition, the yellow vest movement, and how to really try to pilot. So we are now at the stage of piloting. We do have the Philippines, Ghana, and Uruguay, so different regions around the world, to try to see how their interventions on energy, can affect other areas of their economies and create disturbance that were unintended. So I just wanted to highlight how important it is, and creating the share spaces to share practices is important. And similarly, climate smart agriculture is also a concept. We do have Morocco, who has had a lot of experience in bad use of irrigation, but also innovative ways of for irrigation. And there's also piloting processes with Mali, Morocco, Ivory Coast, which aims to be also scaled up. So I just wanted to highlight those. I'm glad. I think I don't have to add anything on traditional knowledge and how important it is to relate to the bottom up. But also, it's so important to the circular economy question. You will not manage to get a circular economy perspective in any program or project if you don't have that bottom up, and making sure that you make it gender and youth responsive. In Mali, they are starting to have a green vest brigade, not yellow vest, a green vest brigade of youth that could hold accountable in some local communities, some communities to be greener, safer, and with some activities on agriculture, but also the use of energy, and also looking at the link to the economy. If you have an agriculture project, who is going to benefit? What are the impacts on the land use rights? For the women, how they create cooperative, using traditional also measures, fiscal even measures, to really benefit when they sell. So it's really a word, we call it the value chain, looking at the value chain, in this respect. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of.
Okay, thanks very much, Yama. That saves me the job of wrapping up. Thanks for you covered a number of issues. We're running out of time, but I think just a short message from, we know that 36% of the world's population live in water-scarce countries. And we've heard also that water scarcity or drought can affect almost any region at any time. So we need to be careful, I think, how we use our resources for the most appropriate use, but we need to be working at the global level to be looking at some of the research, but also in the policy, but on the developed knowledge, to have some honest brokers, like, for example, Wetlands International, working first in the management of resources, in particular, like areas like the inner Niger Delta in Mali, as we said, it covers a number of countries. So where you have good water sharing resource agreements in place, you reduce dramatically the risk of conflict. But I think there is a lot of resources out there, but we need to move more to have some solutions. So, thanks very much. I apologize for the heat of this room. I see people suffering, so I think it's already up to or the topic of things we deal with heat stress. So thanks very much for staying right to the end, and thanks for the speakers. Thank you very much.